If you ever wanted to be a Maine Game Warden, now's your chance.
So what we're looking for are well-rounded subjects, candidates that possess those hunting and fishing skills and other skills.
I'm going to assume you need somebody who can recognize every fish in somebody's cooler.
Yeah, for the most part, sure. We need to have people who fish enough to know that what a brook trout looks like.
This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. The Maine Warden Service is looking for 6 new game wardens. Now, the first time I heard that, I thought, cool. After the popularity of Northwood's Law, that ought to be pretty easy. But then I began to wonder, what does it take to be a Maine Game Warden? What are the qualifications? What do you need to know? How do they evaluate you before they give you a badge, a gun, and a really cool red uniform? Just how challenging is this job? How much of it is Northwood's Law glamour, and how much is just really tough, dangerous work? Every one of these questions will be answered over the course of today's show, because I've got Corporal John McDonald of the Warden Service right here to explain it. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. John McDonald, welcome to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, Maine Game Warden Service is hiring. I guess your closing date is April 15th. I learned about that and said, I don't even know what the qualifications are for a warden, what the job is really about. I think I know, but everybody thinks they know, and no one ever asks. So I thought I'd ask.
Yeah. No, it's a good question, and it's a popular question. In recent years, the popularity of the show Northwood's Law has really driven people to our website. It's driven people to me personally and to the game wardens. And the question is often asked, how do I become a Maine Game Warden? And the show has probably offered more insight into that than we've been able to offer probably in our history. It's been an unprecedented level of exposure for our agency, but there are some key skill sets that we look for sure.
Well, I would have thought after Northwood's Law you'd be turning people away.
Yeah.
And yet now you're in active recruiting. You have months to go find good people.
Yeah.
So it's not a case of just opening the door, letting people walk in, and you pick the ones you like.
No, I guess wish it were that easy. The amount of interest has been very, very high.
Yeah.
As part of my role as corporal for the Warden Service and Public Relations, one of the hats that I wear is the recruiter. And I typically, back in 2010 or 11, I might speak with 150 people or so a year, but that is increased to almost 700 or 800 a year now.
Oh my!
So
where do you find the time?
Well, it's a balance between emailing them and meeting them in person. Kind of, it's my job to decipher, who probably is best suited for it, and it's hard to do that in an email. So there's a lot of follow-up phone calls. People come in and see me, and it's everyone from a high school student doing a high school project on I want to be a game warden.
Yeah, to radio announcers.
To radio announcers, but every profession, a lot of military people that are currently overseas asking me these questions. So the interest level is very, very high, but it's kind of my job to focus in on who brings with them the skill sets that we really need here in the Warden Service.
I'm going to want to know what those are, but let me start with the basics. The Warden Service has been around since 1880.
Right.
That's 36 years.
Yeah.
That has to be back when maybe we still had caribou in the state or wolves or something.
It is. Yeah.
Wildlife was so abundant. Why did we even have a Warden Service back then?
Right. Yeah. No, it is. It came from a fairly modest beginning, and our primary mission back then was fish and wildlife law enforcement. And the first few summonses that were issued just a few days into us being commissioned as game wardens it was a poaching incident that took place in the wintertime with some people that were called crusters back at the time, people that would pursue deer on the crust, and the deer were breaking through, and they would kill deer. And that was our first summonses issued way back then. Obviously, we've evolved a great deal since that time.
Fortunately, poaching just doesn't happen anymore.
We wish that were the
Yeah,
case.
right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the work itself. It looks like it's 5% glamour and 95% hard work. How close
Well,
are my percentages?
There is some glamour, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
We are, to some extent, the front door to the state of Maine for a lot of outdoor enthusiasts.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the popularity of the show and our high level of public support now, we do get a lot of attention, so I guess I could call that glamour. But there are some details within the job that are very, very difficult at times. And, it's finding someone that can deal with the glamour and the other end of the spectrum, too, some of the more difficult things that we have to do. That is the challenge for us to find good people for.
Yeah, it's not just a matter of being physically up to the job, but you actually have to have good judgment.
Right.
That must weed some people out.
Yeah,
Most of my family.
Yeah, good judgment, common sense, hard work ethic, good background, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, the more you start to drill down into someone's background, things become apparent on why they may or may not be good candidates.
Most of the time, it's really not law enforcement so much as it is helping people, even assisting wildlife in those circumstances where a critter gets hurt. What is the percentage of your warden's daily job between doing actual enforcement versus being available to help with search and rescue, or I just hit a deer and it's on the side of the road somewhere? What's the percentage breakdown?
Yeah, I don't have any hard numbers for you right now, but just in my own experience, I've been a warden for 17 years and been around this pretty intimately, and there's a fair amount of need for service. It's a fairly service-oriented public that calls the police to perhaps deal with a fox that could be in someone's yard or whatnot, or other animal issues, homeowner issues and things. So that does take up a fair amount of our time. It's a little more seasonal. Spring and early summer is a pretty active time for us with animals that may be in and around homes more than they normally are. But aside from that, the search and rescue component is very unpredictable. Yeah. You don't know when they're going to take place. You do have some idea of what is going to be a busy day, I guess, in the summer if it's a really nice day. If we have a lot of snow on the ground, and we expect there to be a lot of snowmobiling, you can anticipate that. But you'd have to look at it from a year-long perspective on how much of that other stuff that we do, the wildlife helping and or the nuisance wildlife and whatnot. But it's a fair amount of time. But I would say the majority of our time probably is spent in a higher visibility role, in an education role. Of course, most people that we meet are in compliance with the law, and so our conversations with them generally turn into more of an education, or they're asking us where the good fishing is or where the good trails are, or things like that. So a good amount of our time is just spent with fairly casual conversation with outdoors people.
Well, in fact, most of the time when I'll see a warden in the field, it's usually at some public event like a state park during a Take It Outdoors Day, and when they're doing some kind of exhibit on activities in Maine.
Sure.
And then some of the times it's watching on lakes when people are out snowmobiling, and you have to. I mean, you must worry a little bit about that winter day when the ice is thin, but people are going to be out sledding, because that's when a bad call is going to come in.
Yeah, I mean it is something that we see happen when you can almost anticipate when things are going to happen, and we try to get in front of that with some safety messaging and things. But you can sometimes predict that, okay, tonight I'm going to get the call, there's going to be a snowmobile crash, or if it's the 4th of July and the weather's good, you can plan on a long day.
Yes, right. If you're just joining us here in Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, the Maine Warden Service is looking for 6 new wardens. Corporal John McDonald is here to tell us what they're looking for. Coming up.
It is regarded as a very dangerous job. We have lost more wardens in the line of duty than any other branch of law enforcement in the state of Maine.
This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Corporal John McDonald of the Maine Warden Service is my guest. By April 15th, they will have all the applications they need to choose 6 new game wardens. It's a tough job, and one that's always changing. It's not just law enforcement anymore. Nowadays, it includes things like search and rescue, snowmobile safety.
Right, yeah, just about every decade there for a while, and starting in the mid part of the last century, we were given new duties. Search and rescue was mandated in law. The snowmobiles became very popular in the 60s, into the 70s, and also into the 80s. The ATVs came about. And, watercraft have evolved significantly. I know when I was a young boy in southern Maine on a lake, it was rare for you to see a boat with a motor greater than, 20 horsepower. But that is the rule now rather than the exception. So yeah, things have changed and evolved, and our job has expanded and our responsibilities for sure.
Yeah, when I was growing up, you wouldn't even imagine a 200 horsepower outboard. Now, that's routine.
No. Right. Yeah.
I got to ask, do you get to train on everything? Boats, airboats, ATVs, sleds. You actually get formal training, and do you get to play with all these toys?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, we're training our game wardens. It depends on when they get hired. Of course, if they go through a winter academy, they're not going to get the boating skills until they get into the summer, but they will receive them. We are. I would consider us to be some of the better trained law enforcement in the country. We focus hard on that. We spend a lot of time at it. And game wardens going out into the field now are the best trained game wardens that we've ever had, and quite likely some of the best game wardens, trained game wardens and law enforcement in the country.
One of the things that's amusing for me to watch, because I have a lot of friends who are retired game wardens, is how well a game warden gets to know his or her own territory. Yeah. Because it doesn't take all that long to figure out where the problems are going to be, who the problems are going to be, and really get to familiar with your area.
Right.
How much, is there any training in that, or is that just something you pick up on the way?
Well, that is part of our training process in mentoring new game wardens and connecting with retired game wardens and information sources out there. You do become quite good at anticipating what's going to take place in your district, but a game warden cannot survive and do well in a what we call a district or your patrol area without having the support of the community. And I think my first few years on, I probably thought I could conquer the world, maybe all by myself. Maybe the first few months. It probably didn't last that long. But you quickly realize that, without the support of the community and them providing you with some information and having the confidence and respect to be able to call you and tell you what's going on, we really, we'd have a tough time. And game wardens have been operating like that really since our inception, and it's really the model for community policing, living within our communities. And most people that are in the outdoors, if you ask them if you could pick a town who their game warden is, and they're probably going to know who it is. And I don't think that's true for everyone in law enforcement. And I feel like we're fortunate, and we understand that that's very important to maintain.
Well, it looks like it's a career that has a lot of personal rewards and then pretty good benefits, too. So the personal rewards are, to my eye, you get a certain amount of job security. Right. You get to work outdoors. Yeah. You get to work in the natural environment, sometimes with wildlife and often with people.
Right.
There's opportunities for self-improvement. All these things you can't measure with a paycheck, but they're all really personally rewarding.
They are. You can quickly understand the level of support you get from the community as a game warden. You feel like you are doing good. You can see that you're doing good. You do get to represent the state of Maine in a way that is very unique to people who are visiting Maine, perhaps for the first time or for their 1,000th time. So there's a level of pride that comes along with that. And the bonus to it, as you alluded to, is you get to work outside for the most part, unless you get a more administrative job like myself.
Yeah.
But
why don't you just spell out for me, if you become a warden, what's in it for you from a benefit sort of point of view?
Yeah. Well, it is regarded as a very dangerous job. We have lost more wardens in the line of duty than any other branch of law enforcement in the state of Maine. And I think partly because of that, we are rewarded with a good retirement. The dangers of our job, the accountability associated with being a game warden, the fact that you can get called out in the middle of the night for a snowmobile crash or a search. Most jobs, that is not the case. You work your 8-hour shift and you go home. So the schedule can be very demanding on a game warden and their family. So yes, the rewards are quite good. The retirement is a 25-year retirement with no age restriction. So for me, I started when I was 25, so that means I can retire when I'm 50 and choose to do something else if I so choose to. So that in itself is very, very, it's a great benefit. And so on top of that, if you count the ability to take a vehicle home with you is nice. We supply you with a 4-wheel drive pickup truck. A lot of the tools to do your job, the binoculars and the other items that are essential to do your work, and we provide those to game wardens. They're essential tools for the job. So,
a lot of the tools you would get, I've got to think of the usual law enforcement tools, but also radios, and you say binoculars. And,
right.
Yeah. What else? Anything else really cool in it?
Well, if you watch Northwoods Law, you're going to see us operating a lot of nice boats, snowmobiles and ATVs, and if you're the Sebago Lake Game Warden, you probably have a couple boats. You need one that is dedicated to the lake, something that you're not going to trailer on and off very often. And you may have a smaller boat that you can jump around to some of the lakes and ponds, and you may have a canoe to go on top of that too. So, they're all very, very important tools to do our job, and without them, we couldn't do it.
Corporal John McDonald is my guest. He's the Maine Warden Service guy who's primarily in charge of recruiting new game wardens, and they are looking for some new wardens right now. There's a lot of general stuff you have to be able to do as a warden, but more and more these days, there's some specialized stuff that some of the wardens get to do. We'll dig into that in a moment. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8. This morning's show is coming to you from the Maine Warden Service office in Bangor. I'm sitting down with Corporal John McDonald, finding out what it takes to be a game warden, and also what you get to do once you become one. These days, you might be a pilot, or a diver, or a canine specialist.
Yeah, there are a fair amount of specialties that you can get into. I've been on some. You can be part of the forensic mapping team, which basically is a fancy term for a group of game wardens that have been trained specifically to go in and map crime scenes. And rather than the days of a sketch pad and a pencil, we go in and map a crime scene, a crash scene, whatever it might be, with some forensic mapping tools, which basically looks like surveying type equipment with some CAD software. So that's one of them. We have a firearms team that trains our game wardens to a high level of proficiency twice a year with their firearm systems, which include a handgun, a shotgun, and a rifle. We have a dive team, which is pretty visible on television because we're making a fair amount of recoveries every year, and our dive boat is often captured in association with some of those shows. And our divers are trained to a very high level. A lot of them are dive master. In fact, they may all be dive master certified. I've never been on that team, but it's there's a lot of risk involved with that team.
I was going to say, that one looks dangerous.
Anybody that's afraid of the water, that would probably scare you to death.
Yeah.
Maine's waters aren't known to be crystal clear like that in the Bahamas or the Caribbean. And
or as warm as the Bahamas and
or as warm. And they're charged with recovering bodies and bringing that closure to families. There's the air wing division where we do have pilots and some aircraft, and those are used in a mixture of law enforcement and resource management and those types of things, and certainly search and rescue. They play a key role.
The canines are relatively new to the Warden Service, too, aren't they? Only 10, 15 years, a little more than that?
I think they've been around since the 70s,
Okay.
Bob, but I can't. I guess I couldn't tell you the date for sure, but we've had them around for several years. I think close to 40 years. I might be a little off, but that is one of our most critical teams in terms of search and rescue. We have some fantastic dogs and handlers that find people routinely who otherwise probably would not have been found.
Well, I certainly know one of the people who is now a retired game warden, Deb Paulman.
Yep.
Is very heavily into search and rescue dogs and has been raising dogs for a long time. She was also my classmate and friend at Colby College
good. Yeah.
a long time ago. Sorry, Deb, I just outed you as being old. But she once told me that people who think they're getting in this because they love wildlife end up shooting most of what they meet. How often do you really have to dispatch an animal that's been hurt by a collision or something like that? Is this or something that's possibly rabid in the backyard of a neighborhood? How often does this stuff happen?
It's pretty common.
Yeah.
We discharge our firearms for injured wildlife. I couldn't give you a number, but it's often in the field as a game warden. It depends on where you live, I suppose. In higher populated areas, you could come across car deer crashes or animals that were suspected of surviving a car deer crash, and a homeowner finds them on the front lawn the next day, or sick or injured looking animals, rabid animals, and things like that. So no, we have to dispatch or kill.
You're right.
We use the word
Euthanize.
dispatch,
Yeah.
but we have to kill a fair amount of animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it take to be a warden? And let's start with age. How old is there? A minimum age, maximum age?
There's a minimum age. You have to be 21 years old. The only exception to being 21 years old is if you are 20 years old and you have 60 college credits or more. So that's the only exception. 20 with 60 college credits or 21 years old. We do not have a maximum age. No.
Yeah, but there are physical limitations. I mean, you've got to be physically fit.
You do.
So what are the requirements to demonstrate that you are physically fit?
Well, before someone can even submit an application with the Warden Service or any full-time law enforcement job for that matter, that person has to first go to the Maine Criminal Justice Academy in Vassalboro. They administer a physical fitness test and a alert exam. It's ALERT. It's an alert exam. Basically, it's a reading comprehension type of an exam. That's administered by the academy. If you take and pass those, you then become eligible to submit an application with us. So that's what people are scrambling to do right now. We have an application period open until April 15th. The Academy in Vassalboro has specific dates throughout the month, generally 1 or 2 test dates a month, where applicants pursuing becoming a game warden can go to the Academy, take those 2 exams. It costs, I believe, $85, and hopefully if they pass those 2, they can then go on and submit our application, which is due on April 15th.
So what's on that test? Is there a lot of math? Because I would fail at that.
No, not a lot of math.
Thank God.
There's not a lot of math. It's, be honest with you, I think I took mine in early 1990s, and so a lot of time has elapsed since then. It's just the Academy's test to be sure that applicants meet some basic requirements for even submitting applications. And it works out well. It's a very tuned system, and it seems to be working out well for us.
Are there any particular college degrees, credits, line of study that are particularly beneficial, or can you be an English major and come in and be a warden?
You could be an English major and come in and be a warden. The key skill sets that we see as the pattern that really needs to be there, in addition to everything else, which I'm sure we'll get into, is that we need to hire people who like to hunt and fish. And if someone has a great deal of hunting and fishing experience in their background, we're not seeing a significant difference between that person who's got an English degree and that person who's got a criminal justice degree, or no degree for that matter. It really boils down to all the other stuff that they bring to the table. For instance, you could have someone with a 4-year college degree in I don't know, you could conservation law enforcement. And if they had never participated in hunting and fishing, never held a firearm, they likely will never get hired because they don't have that well-rounded experience and hands-on experience with hunting. So what we're looking for are well-rounded subjects, candidates that possess those hunting and fishing skills and other skills.
I'm going to assume you need somebody who can recognize every fish in somebody's cooler.
Yeah, for the most part, sure. We need to have people who fish enough to know that what a brook trout looks like, what a bass looks like, a lake trout, salmon. The common cold and freshwater fish that, or cold and warm water fish that people typically catch here in Maine. And we simply can't bring someone from a ground level of just not knowing anything about hunting and fishing and bring them to a level to be a game warden in our hiring process and training. So we need to capture the interest of people who like to hunt and fish.
My guest is Corporal John McDonald, and we're talking about what it takes to be a Maine Game Warden. The Warden Service is looking for new wardens right now. So you go through the first round of tests, but what's next? What is the next round of screening? And if you do make the cut, how are they going to train you and where are they going to put you? Stand by. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket with Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. I'm with Corporal John McDonald of the Maine Warden Service. They're looking for new wardens. Hundreds of people will apply, but by the time they're done, only 6 will be chosen. So, John, once you've gone through the initial screening to see if you'd even be eligible, there's got to be another round of testing to see if you can make the cut.
Yeah, there is. When you've completed the 2 exams we talked about at the academy, you submit your application. You're going to be given a written exam. It's 50 questions, and it basically is general common knowledge questions, multiple choice, that deal with the Maine outdoors. And it's not over the top, it's not expert level, but if you have never participated in outdoor activities like recreational vehicles, boats, snowmobiles, ATVs, hunted or fished, you're going to take a big swallow when you look at the exam because you may not get that. But someone who is an avid outdoorsman will probably take the exam and feel relatively comfortable doing so.
Well, whose test is harder then, this test or for Registered Maine Guides?
This one for sure.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah,
No kidding.
Only because of I haven't taken the written exam for the Maine Guides. I got my guides license back and I was younger. I think it was 1991. And that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg for our hiring exam. That written exam is the first kind of elimination process, so to speak. Just for sake of argument, if we have 100 people apply to be a game warden, we give those 100 people that first 50-question written exam. And let's just say 50 of them fail. That gives us a pool of candidates that not only passed the PT exam, the alert exam, but passed a fairly comprehensive fish and wildlife test. And that puts in front of us possibly 50 people who then go through what we call an oral board exam. That oral board exam is kind of where the rubber meets the road. That is our first opportunity to really get a feel for a candidate. The test consists of 3 basic parts. It's a general interview where we will ask you questions like, why do you want to be a game warden? What do you bring to the table? It'll be scenario-based questions. What would you do if questions. We'll give them fairly common scenarios that a game warden would encounter in the field. Not over the top, complicated, but and we gear it towards someone right off the street without any law enforcement experience to try to get an idea, get into their head on how they would manage a particular scenario.
Do you grill them to see if they can handle the pressure?
A little bit.
Yeah, good for you.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yep. And the third phase of the questioning is a hands-on experience where you have, you'll walk into the room with the game wardens there, and it'll feel like you're going into the den of a camp. You're going to have furs there, you're going to have firearms, some flashcards, some fishing equipment, things. So that third phase of the oral board exam is to test their knowledge firsthand on some of these outdoor-related items. So you get those combination of those 3 things. We don't. We kind of mix it up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and just the nature of you being there for a job you're passionate about is somewhat nerve-wracking.
Mm.
It makes you anxious and nervous, whatever. But we do. We make you think. We encourage you to think out loud and process some of these scenarios we put you through.
Well, fishing regulations can be a little bit complicated about how you can fish and where you can fish and when you can fish. And so some people can make mistakes.
Yep.
How do you train your wardens to handle people who clearly weren't intending to break the law but did?
Yeah.
That must be part of the training somehow.
Well, that's a really good question, Bob. And that's part of the reason why we need to hire people who hunt and fish and who understand how laws can be broken and understand that people sometimes intentionally break the law and sometimes people unintentionally break the law. And there's a fairly clear distinction there, and one that may require a game warden to take a law enforcement action or a warning. Could be the same violation, two different people. But their level of intent, I think, plays a big role into that. So having a hunting and fishing background gives that person, the game warden, that perspective. Otherwise, they may not know that information. So we do have to be particularly careful. That oral board exam is part of that process, is to see how someone thinks. If they're completely black and white and they don't have the life experience to draw the distinction between one scenario and another, and they're just, someone broke the law, they're going to get a ticket. That's not what we're looking for. We are looking for some thoughtfulness in their response. Ask us follow-up questions, and we need to be sure that game wardens are, especially in a law enforcement interaction, that or if there's a law enforcement action taken, that the person knew what they were doing, and there was some level of intent there to break the law. So it's a difficult thing to, I guess, describe, but we work very, very hard to make sure that we hire people who are well-rounded, mature, reasonable, and can think logically through some of those scenarios to make the right decision.
Yeah, and it's tricky because we really want people from out of state to come here and enjoy our woods and waters, to stay at our fishing camps and lodges, sporting camps, and go fishing, go hunting. Right. But they're not necessarily going to have that internal sense of information that a lot of us grew up with because we came from here.
Right.
And so they're going to make mistakes. And you're maybe the first ambassador that they're going to run into, and that encounter is either going to go well or it's not.
Right. And you spoke of non-residents or out-of-staters, but it's just as true for people here in Maine. They have to, the old saying that ignorance is no excuse. Quite frankly, sometimes it is. And some people are oblivious to the laws. Maybe it's their very first experience with getting into fishing, and we have to have game wardens in place that can distinguish between those people that are here for the first time and maybe making a mistake, or digging in a little bit deeper and discovering that they probably knew what they were doing. And we just do the very best we can to make sure that we have people in those positions that can make those tough calls.
Yep. I'm assuming if you have a long history of jacking deer that you can't become a warden. There must be some things that automatically disqualify you.
Yeah, there's a whole list of automatic disqualifiers. It probably could consume enough time for a separate show, but I think anybody listening, you can probably think of a handful of things that would eliminate you from being a police officer right out of the gate. Convicted felon.
Any kind of felony whatsoever.
If you don't have a driver's license, or you've lost your driver's license, or OUI convictions, things like that are certainly recent in your history. The felonies, it would be there'd be no time on that. But we, in doing our backgrounds, understand that there's a trend in people's background where we see a fairly substantial spike in people's dabbling in criminal history, making bad decisions between the ages of 18 and 21. And we could go on for, probably hours, the reasons for that. But for whatever those reasons are, if we have a candidate that comes in, they're 21 years old, and they made some pretty bad decisions a week ago, that's much, much different than if they had made those really bad decisions 4 years ago or 3 years ago. those bad decisions are all over the charts. There's all, every different example you could think of, but generally, we're looking for someone, if they've made those mistakes at points in their life, and everybody does. We never have hired an angel because they don't exist. Those people that have made mistakes, if they have, you have to start looking at, were these mistakes repeated? Did they learn from those? Did they move on? Have they not made them since? Have they matured since? So everybody you have to take into look at an individual basis, and it's important that they put some time between them and that bad decision that they've made.
Well, I could certainly see somebody who had a somewhat misspent youth, went into the military, got all straightened out, now is disciplined and organized and educated and ready to actually go into law enforcement. You would recognize that with somebody who maybe has a misdemeanor in their record.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would.
My guest is Corporal John McDonald of the Maine Warden Service. They have 6 openings to fill and a deadline coming up. Today's show is about the people who are Maine's first line of defense for wildlife, outdoor safety, and our outdoor sporting heritage. And it's not just men they're looking for. We'll get into that in a moment. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. On today's show, we're finding out what it takes to be a Maine Game Warden and all the challenges and opportunities that go with the job. The Maine Warden Service is looking to hire some new game wardens, and they're looking for a few good men and women. Corporal John McDonald is the guy in charge of warden recruitment, and the deadline is coming up, John.
Well, April 15th is going to be the deadline, and they have to have their applications in by 5 o'clock on that last day to be eligible. But, people, I think the ones that are very serious about the job are not waiting till the last minute. They've known this was coming, or they at least anticipated it was coming. So they probably already got the PT done and the alert test through the academy, and they're just probably fine-tuning their applications to make sure that it looks as good as possible, and they're submitting their applications. But if you wait until April 10th, you probably will have missed the opportunities to take the physical test and the alert exam, and you would miss this opportunity. But
well, when's the next one?
We just don't know.
Yeah.
It may be next year.
Yeah.
We just have to wait and see.
Well, how many positions are you trying to fill during this go around?
I think at least 6.
Yeah, okay.
At least 6. We just hired 4 last December based on a hiring process we had last year, and we still had vacancies even with hiring those 4. So there's quite a bit of lag time, Bob. If we need a game warden right now, you have the open enrollment period where you have to gather the applications. They have about a 4 to 5 month hiring process. Sometimes it's condensed a little bit. We try to expedite, but that can be even as long as 6 months long, just the hiring process. So you got
never mind the training.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got 2 or 3 months of application, 6 months of hiring, and then you got 18 weeks of police academy, which is through Vassalboro, like we just talked about, the Maine Criminal Justice Academy. Game wardens that are hired are first trained as state law enforcement officers through the police academy, and they go through with everyone else, whether you're deputy sheriff or Bangor PD or whatnot. So we all get trained to the same level as state law enforcement officers or certified police officers. Then there's the Game Warden Academy, which kicks in after the police academy for an additional 12 weeks. So you got a couple months of application period, 6 months of hiring process, 7 months of academy. So if we need a game warden today and right now, we won't have that person in the field until probably summer of next year. Not this summer, but next year. So just about every time we hire new people and get them through the process, we might likely have a new vacancy created. But that's just how it works.
And then there's that exciting moment where you find out that you grew up in Gray, but they're going to move you to St. Agathe. Because I assume that you are assigned a territory, and that's where your job is going to go, and you're going to go with it.
Oh, yeah. You say Gray, and that's where I'm from. Maybe you knew that, but
I didn't.
No, I grew up in Gray, and I'm a proud Gray boy and didn't want to move too far away from home, but I didn't care. I wanted to be a game warden.
But you could end up at Parlin Pond.
Well, my wife's speaks and at the time spoke fluent French. So I said, you know what, honey, we are probably going to go to the Canadian border, and you're going to work at a gatehouse. And it never happened.
No.
It never happened. But
Yeah.
I was stationed in Cornish for my first patrol area, and it was a great fit for me. I had a wonderful time, and now live back closer to the coast and home near Freeport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would think if you come from somewhere in southern Maine, for instance, and suddenly you're up in northern Maine and Aroostook County, where a lot of the population is speaking French and they're all cousins.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're the outsider who's trying to fit into this community and make friends
Right.
and relationships. That
Right.
has got to be a little bit of a challenge, and that's why you need the right people.
It is, yeah. And quite often as a new law enforcement officer, you don't really want to cut your teeth in your own community.
Mm-hmm.
So to speak. It's tough. Unless you get a lot of experience, it's an uncomfortable situation when you're brand new in law enforcement to be in your hometown. So quite often that doesn't happen. And people know that going into the process, that they have to be willing to locate anywhere in the state. And sometimes that's a deterrent for people to come work for us, too, because we know that some of the very best people out there are already in the workforce. They're not people looking for a job, possibly as a young adult. It's someone that's been in the workforce for a long time. So if that's part of our message, too, on this our recruitment efforts, is that we know this. And if someone's in a position, even if they're comfortable at their job, but they've always wanted to pursue being a game warden, this is your time to to make that happen.
All right. Let's say I've got somebody who's 20 years old and in the audience right now listening saying, you know, I always dreamed about being a game warden, but I never knew how to get started. What is the thing they now need to do in order to pay attention to when these jobs come open, what the training and requirements are going to be? Where do they look first?
Well, if they're looking to become a game warden, there's we have a website, and we have our current openings on there. It's pretty easy to remember. It's maingamewarden.com, and we have a career page there. On that page, you can contact a recruiter, obviously at any time through email. That goes to my email, and they can ask me any questions they may like. And so that's one of their avenues for contacting us, and there's a whole host of information there on, you know, some of the things we've talked about as far as disqualifying things and some of the requirements for getting hired. But for that 20-year-old, you know, if in hearing this, this is the first time that they've actually ever considered it, I would encourage them to look at the website first and kind of see what the job entails before, you know, jumping in to see what the job's all about, or email me so I can call and talk to them. Now, on the flip side of that, you're going to have someone listening that has wanted to do this since they can remember. Right. That same 20-year-old or a 20-year-old. And they probably know most of what to do. But if this is the first time they've heard about it, you will need to go to the website, and there's some applications that they can download. Everything's spelled out there for you.
So we talk about guys coming into this, but what about women? There are female game wardens.
There are, but we only have 3 out of a complement of 124 uniformed officers here. And that's my challenge as a recruiter, and it's one of my top priorities, is to find women that are well-suited for this job, and there's a lot of them out there. We see it in the field every day, and we encourage our game wardens to talk to some of these women that are engaged in outdoor activities and kind of plant the seed that this is an opportunity for them if that's something they want to pursue. But in law enforcement, it's a challenge. If we have that 100 people that apply, I can almost guarantee you that at least 90 of them are going to be men. And that's part of our culture, I suppose, is that doesn't I'm going to generalize for just a second, but in general, I think we grow our daughters up differently than our boys in what sports that they get engaged in. Doesn't happen in my family necessarily, but the girls do the girl stuff and the guys do the guy stuff. So that's a challenge in and of itself, is that our culture doesn't, in general, the girls don't hunt and fish as much, but we know that they do. Especially here in Maine.
God,
we have
these days, even the boys don't hunt and fish as much as
exactly,
they used to.
Exactly. And what we're finding is that there's a lot of women out there that are good candidates, but they're just not making that step to come to the door and knock and apply. So for anyone listening that's a female interested in law enforcement, and more specifically in off-road law enforcement working for the Warden Service, I encourage them to go to the website, maingamewarden.com, and they can click on Contact Recruiter and talk to me about that. But we really encourage them to apply and go through the process and give it a shot. Yeah.
Great. Well, John McDonald, thank you very much for being on Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine.
Great. Thank you very much for having me, Bob.
That's Corporal John McDonald of the Maine Warden Service. If you know someone who might be interested in being a game warden, remind them this whole show is archived at the web at 929theticket.com so they can hear it. And you can get all the official information about the job from the Maine Warden Service website. Before we close, a reminder. Next weekend, the Penobscot Fly Fishers are offering up their cabin fever reliever at the Brewer Auditorium. It's the first sportsman show of the season, and it's free. Next Saturday, 10 to 5, and Sunday, 10 to 3. This show returns next weekend. We hit the air at 9 on Saturday morning and 8 on Sundays. It's Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, and it's brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.